Most people think that if you're not taking any medications and you're becoming eligible for Medicare, you can skip drug coverage and pick it up later. And that mistake could follow you for the rest of your life. My name is Wendi. I'm an independent insurance broker. I'm located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but licensed in multiple states. And I work almost exclusively with Medicare recipients and people preparing for retirement. And today, we're going to talk about prescription drug coverage, how you get it, when you need it, what counts as creditable drug coverage, and why two different drug plans with the exact same premium can treat your drug coverage completely differently. Medicare Part D is your prescription drug coverage. It's the only letter associated with Medicare that makes any sense. The only type of drugs that could be covered under Part B are drugs that are administered at a facility. Infusions, chemotherapy, dialysis are a few examples. So unless you have other creditable coverage, typically you'll need to pick up some type of drug coverage to go along with Medicare A and B. There are basically two ways you can get drug coverage through Medicare. You can either get a standalone drug plan, or you can get a Medicare Advantage plan that has drug coverage included. So if you're someone who is planning on choosing a Medicare supplement to supplement original Medicare, neither original Medicare nor your Medicare supplement plan include drug coverage. So under that circumstance, you would need to pick up a standalone drug plan. Now here's where people get very confused. Many people assume that buying drug coverage specifically is kind of like picking up car insurance. And basically the coverage is the same, and it might be a little bit different in a premium from one company to the other, but that is not how drug coverage works at all. One drug plan to another, whether it's a standalone drug plan or if you're looking at a Medicare Advantage plan with drug coverage included, your medication coverage can be different, and here's why. Each plan creates its own what's called formulary. So even if it's with the same company, one standalone drug plan may cover some of your medications completely differently than another one of its plans. So what the heck is a formulary? A formulary is simply a plan's list of covered drugs, how those are covered, and it will also include sometimes a deductible. I work with people who are both brand new to Medicare, so we're exploring all of their drug coverage options, but I also work with people who have been on Medicare for some time, and in either of those circumstances, we frequently see one medication may be covered very well under one drug plan and maybe not even covered at all on another. Another thing that can happen is some drug plans will cover a brand name of your medication better than a generic, believe it or not. And in some cases, the generic is much less expensive. And that's one of the main reasons I tell people, or at least caution people, when you're going onto Medicare.gov and intend on choosing your own drug plan, be very cautious before you just enroll into the cheapest one, because the least expensive premium may not be covering all of your medications or may not be covering them very well. That could lead to very high costs out of pocket when you actually pick those medications up. I have two different clients. Both of them are on a plan that costs about $5 a month. Person A takes no medications at all. Person B takes several pretty expensive medications. Those two people could need completely different plans to make sure they're covered properly. That formulary on that particular drug plan might be fantastic for one person and save them thousands of dollars. But for another person on that exact same plan with a different list of medications, that may cost them several thousands of dollars a year. Now let's talk about the timing with Part D, because this is where the penalties will happen frequently and how we can avoid those penalties. When you're first eligible for Medicare, you have what's called your initial enrollment period. That initial enrollment period is a 7-month window. It starts 3 months prior to the month you turn 65, includes the month you turn 65, and goes all the way through 3 months after the month you turn 65. This is typically your first opportunity to enroll into some type of drug plan. If you're already receiving Social Security benefits at least 4 months prior to the month you turn 65, your Part A and B will be automatic, but your Part D will not. What if you're working past 65? This is where a lot of people get tripped up, and more of us are working well beyond our 65th birthday, so this segment is incredibly important. If you are actively working or you're covered under a spouse's active employment, you may be able to delay certain parts of Medicare with no penalty at all. But delaying Medicare and delaying Part D are not automatic decisions. The big question is whether or not your current coverage is considered creditable as far as Medicare is concerned. So what's creditable coverage? Creditable coverage concerning drug coverage really just means that your current drug coverage would cover your medications at least as well or maybe even better than a Medicare drug plan would. Some examples are these: employer coverage, union coverage, certain types of retiree plans, VA coverage, TRICARE, and Indian Health Service drug coverage counts as creditable as well. Usually, or at least most employers will send you a letter every single year telling you whether or not your drug coverage is creditable. If you miss that, or if your employer does not send that out, you can always check with your Human Resources Department and find out if your drug coverage at work is considered creditable. The next thing I want to share with you is where I see a lot of people make a very expensive mistake. Constantly, I hear people tell me, well, I don't take any medication, so I'm just going to skip Part D. But Medicare does not care whether you take medications or not. If you miss your window of opportunity, whether it's your initial enrollment period or when you lose creditable coverage and you're getting it after retirement, as an example, and enroll later, you will incur a penalty, and that penalty lasts forever. So the penalty itself isn't based on whether or not you take medications, it's based on whether or not you have creditable coverage when you don't get Part D coverage through Medicare. I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in this video, but when we're working past 65, there is some significant timelines you need to be aware of. The moment you lose creditable coverage, so whether your spouse retires or you retire in this particular example, the clock starts. You don't have an infinite amount of time to pick up drug coverage at your leisure and still avoid a penalty. You really need to start planning before your retirement date. Medicare only gives you 63 calendar days to get drug coverage after you lose creditable coverage, or the lifetime penalty will be added when you enroll later. It also doesn't matter what time of year you retire. You are not required to wait to a specific enrollment period in order to pick up drug coverage when you lose creditable coverage. You have what's called a special enrollment period, and that is what those 63 calendar days are for. So let's just do a real quick recap. There are two different ways you can get drug coverage through Medicare. You can either get a standalone Part D plan. So for those of you who are going to choose or have already chosen a Medicare supplement plan, you get a standalone drug plan to go along with that. The other option is to get a Medicare Advantage plan that has drug coverage included in it. Drug formularies can vary dramatically, so whenever you run your quotes on Medicare.gov, or if you're working with someone like me, a broker or advisor, make sure the review of your medication coverage is very, very thorough. And if you're not totally sure what you're seeing on your screen on Medicare.gov, please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you don't have somebody else in your area to talk to about it. The cheapest premium does not equate to the best plan necessarily. So if you see a 0 premium option or a $5 option, you still want to look and make sure how those drugs are actually being covered throughout the calendar year. Also, working past 65 doesn't necessarily mean you automatically need to delay Part D. Again, you need to make sure that what you have at work or through a spouse's employment is going to be considered creditable so you don't get hit with penalties later. And remember, it makes no difference to Medicare whether you take 1 medication, 0 medications, or 50 medications. That penalty will be assessed to your drug coverage if you miss the windows that they give you to enroll. If you have any questions that are specific to your circumstances, don't hesitate to drop those in the comments. And remember, if this kind of information is helpful to you, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next week.